Hello everybody, welcome to FreightWaves Now, your Monday edition. Hope you all had a great weekend. Zach Strickland, the Sultan of Snowdar, he'll be joining us shortly to kind of give us a little recap of what happened over the weekend with the freight markets and some other information as well. I'm going to be talking to you right now, just for a few minutes, about the weather and what's going to be happening today and tonight as far as the trouble spots and where there might be some disruptions in freight movement as far as weather. Out west is really where we're focusing. Up in California, snowfall coming back to the Sierra Nevada. This is mostly the northern Sierra Nevada, the northernmost part of California, and the Cascades in California, up into Oregon as well. That's where the heaviest snow has been falling today. That's where it'll continue through tonight. Some of the highest elevations up there could see maybe 1 to 2 feet of snow, and there'll be some really strong wind gusts in some of those areas too. Now moving out to the Midwest, few spots of just light rain and snow. Luckily it's light because they don't need any more heavy precipitation up there. Eastern Nebraska, western Iowa, still seeing lots and lots of areas that are flooded out up in this region here. And according to the Corps of U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, about 200 miles of breached levees up in that region. That's one reason why there's still a lot of flooding up there. Still several bridges out from eastern Nebraska into western Iowa, right along the Missouri River, including the Omaha, Nebraska area. Lots of U.S. roads, sections of U.S. roads and state routes in Nebraska also just out of commission. So a lot of travel problems continuing this week with more areas that are going to be flooded through the rest of this week as well. And also Union Pacific Railroad still has some of their subdivisions out of service. A few are back in service after the flooding, but a few of them are still out of service. Those are the Columbus, Lincoln, and Falls City subdivisions. So even some of the rails, nothing's going to be moving. Still going to be a lot of trouble this week. We're going to bring in Zach Strickland right now, talk a little bit more about the weather, maybe in relation to what's happening on the index that we have up on this map, which is the outbound tender market share. So what can we say about it?
All right, so our fan favorite of mine is the outbound tender market share, and what that is telling us, this is the weekly change, and that's telling us how much the volume has changed relationally to the rest of the country versus last week. And anything in red indicates that volume has probably decreased week over week. And the big notice, the big change that I see
Southern California,
bright
red,
starting to drop right back down. This market, I know we've talked about it in the past, has really been dragging up a lot of our national volume over the last several months. And to see a big dark red there is a pretty big shift in dynamic of the market. It's not necessarily a terrible thing, but it is something that we need to watch moving forward, because as this volume declines, we should see some other dark blue spots kind of come in and
picking up in other spots.
Yeah, and we're
kind of like the weather.
Exactly.
If it's really hot and dry in one region, it's got to be wet and cooler somewhere else, right? It's got to be balanced.
Exactly.
Hopefully.
The least interesting thing is for this map to be white or a light shade of one of the colors. It's but anyway, we do see a few of those dark blue spots showing up. And Dallas, a nice big market, starting to pick back up in terms of volume. It's still not up to where it was a year over year, but we're going to get to that here in a minute. But Atlanta turning dark red is not a great sign.
I noticed that too. I mean, that's usually a big market.
And it's Atlanta's time of year right now. This spring, where we're kind of sitting on the precipice of, you know, this huge volume push. I know there's been a lot of talk about the economy kind of slowing down, how that's going to impact the freight market. Probably going to slow things down, especially after last year. Last year was, I mean, anytime we kind of compare year over year, we were going to be kind of predisposed to being at the mercy of the previous year being too hot or too cold or whatever it is.
And we don't want to fall off that precipice, you know?
No, don't drop.
Don't want to do that.
There are some decent dark blue spots showing up here. The Chattanooga market, good old Chattanooga, where we are right now, starting to pick back up. Indianapolis, a nice big market. It's about 2.5% total market share of outbound volume in the rest of the country. So we are seeing some signs of volume start to pick back up in other areas of the country, which is very good. And we'll move over here to the national charts for the outbound tender market, or outbound tender volume index, compared to the outbound tender rejection index for the United States. The tender rejection index is kind of a measure of, market capacity. As carriers are accepting more loads, that means that they have less options, so therefore rate pressure should go down. And we see that this line is really fallen all the way down.
Just plummeting, I know.
Yeah, 6.49%. It really, since the beginning of the year, after that initial cliff that it fell off of, the precipice, if you will, it started to really just flatten out. And it's not necessarily a huge drop, but it's this gradual kind of pull back into a normal state of being. We don't normally see it stay this flat in March, however. March should be is more of a tumultuous month. It's kind of like the season's changing, a transitional month. And you see right here, volume has actually picked up coming out of February, and it's still remaining relatively high coming out of the February. And we had this brief interlude here where things retracted, but volumes are actually pretty decent right now. But it is a different story year over year. Okay. Which is the next chart that I'm going to pull up here.
Yeah, how does it compare?
Yeah.
That's the question.
I mean, that's kind of anytime we get a big point of reference, the year over year is the first thing that we go to. And I have the chart here of the outbound tender volume index year over year for the United States of America. And what you see here is the percent change versus the exact same date last year in terms of the volume index number.
Yeah, it's down
and right
a little
now
bit.
we're down negative. We're negative 3.13%, and we have been negative since that early push in March. You see, in the early part of March, we were actually kind of excited because things were really elevated. But what it turns out is that we've had an inversion of volume this year, weather term for you.
That's right.
So the volume last year actually settled down in the first week of March and then picked up. We had the exact opposite this year where volume actually picked up in the first week of March. We were thinking, oh great, finally spring, and it did stick a little bit more than we expected it to. Their volumes are still pretty decent, but we still just haven't had that nice big push. So 3.13% down year over year.
How significant is that? It doesn't sound like a big number, but it may be very significant.
No, that's a big deal. Like 3% down year over year. Again, last year was a little bit more heated, but at the same time, we're just not seeing this big push of freight coming out of these markets. We're about 5% up over February averages, which is a good sign in general. But to kind of pull it back to more of a granular approach here, this is the outbound tender market share heat map. And we can see day over day, things have not shifted significantly since yesterday or the week before. So we're seeing a flattening of volume in most of the country in terms of a day over day. We're not seeing a lot of big volatility going on right now. You see these grays? These grays are kind of the
blah.
blah.
It's just
it's
really not
great.
much going on.
You got Salt Lake City down here picking up 1.2%, and there's your Dallas that we were talking about on the weekly change.
It was turning
picking up some volume. This is a key market to watch this time of year too, because Dallas is one of those southern tier markets that things start to pick up out of Dallas. Then the rest of the country kind of starts to follow. So this is key markets.
So we'll be watching Dallas really closely.
Yeah, our bigger markets. You know, we were looking at a weekly change over there, but this is a day over day change right here. So Ontario did pick up a little bit in terms of a day over day. Allentown, Pennsylvania, another market kind of starting to pick up a little bit. So we'll go to the next chart. And this one right here is going to relay year over year changes for all these bigger markets in the country, just so we have a nice point of reference for what's going on. And I know this time of year we're waiting on, like I said, everybody's kind of waiting on this big seasonal shift and dynamic for the freight market. And we really haven't had that yet. And you see these lines up here are the western cities, if you will. These lines up here. And this is one of them is Los Angeles and the other one is Ontario. Or actually, one of them is Ontario, the other one's Seattle. We don't see the legend up there for some reason, but down here, and this is what I wanted to point out, you see these positive numbers. Where are they? There we go. Over here. So right here.
On this axis,
this is the positive numbers. This line right here is 26.97, that's Seattle. This one is Ontario, 36.61% year over year increase in volume.
Really?
Down here, you have Dallas, Joliet, and Atlanta, all down in terms of percentage. Significantly. So that was my point earlier in the day, is that all of these volumes have really been imbalanced year over year. the West Coast has been heavily focused on like getting all these containers out of the ports, you know, the tariff pull forward that we talked about.
We talked about that numerous times over the past few months.
Yeah, and this right here is showing us that that's exactly the case. All the freight is sitting out on the West Coast, little change, and when we're seeing that red over there on the outbound tender market share weekly change map, that means that the freight should start pulling out into the rest of the country. So far, it really hasn't done that yet. Overall volume is still kind of depressed versus last year, but again, returning to normal, everybody kind of increased some capacity year over year. We're probably going to see a more stabilized freight market for certainly the near term.
Okay.
Yeah.
Zach, thank you so much. Great information. We hope it helps you out. Hopes that it keeps you from falling off that precipice. We do not want that to happen. Everybody stay safe out there with the weather as well, especially with that snow out in Northern California. Later tonight and tomorrow, that snow is going to be spreading further southward into the southern part of the Sierra Nevada too, and maybe even sneaking over into Nevada. So just be safe out there, and you can join us every weekday at 4 p.m. on FreightWaves Now. Go to freightwaves.com, you'll see the video there, and we hope that you'll join us tomorrow.